Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for your attention and your time today. So, Atlas Chronicles, designing an Italian archive of past local TV channels. I'm sorry we will experience some small graphical problems with the slide, but it should be readable. So, first of all, let me bring to you some apologies from Luca Barra and Diego Cavallotti. They were supposed to be here together with me today to present our project Sixth Sense, but for personal reason, they both had to withdraw at the very last minute. Sorry for that, but let's get the ball rolling now. So today we'd like to introduce some preliminary ideas coming from a national research project called Atlas, Atlas of Local Television, which aims to establish a first inventory of private local TV channels operating in Italy between 1976 and 1990, in the midst of the commercialization process of Western European television, an often neglected area of both academic investigation and archival practice, at least in Italy. What are the main goals of our project? First of all, there is the scientific interest to better reconstruct the complex and sometimes forgotten histories, we could say, of the transformation of Italian television from public service monopoly to commercial networks, with a significant role played by small or by more ambitious private channels, active primarily on a local basis. To simplify extremely, usually this is a portion of national media history that focuses on the ascent of Silvio Berlusconi as a successful media mogul. This is, of course, capital, but we want to trace the many histories of the many Berlusconis that were not able to actually become Berlusconi, of the many entrepreneurs, idealists, maneuvers that tried their way there. A second goal is the need to grant access, at least partially, to the news, the shows, the programming, the audiovisual content produced by these local private channels, and to other materials and testimonies that are already difficult to find and will probably get lost in a few years. The task is very ambitious, and the research can only be partial to actually be possible. This is the reason we have planned our work as a pilot project, a study that will start with a very limited amount of case histories, also establishing a way and possibly a method for future additions. We selected 5 local networks that are localized across different regions. Here you can see their logos. So Antenna 3 in Lombardy, Sardegna 1 in Sardinia, Videogruppo in Piedmont, Teleroma 56 in the capital, and TeleSanterno in Emilia-Romagna. Together, they provide a variety of histories, memories, ambitions, and failures, and of course, archives. In this context, we are currently engaging with video archives in at least 2 ways. On the one hand, we are trying to explore informal, scattered archives of the 5 local channels, using them as a source material for our research to better ground in televisual text and sometimes contradict other documents or histories. Sometimes the archive is managed by widows and relatives of the founders, so gender dimension, Dalila and Vanessa mentioned before, come up again. Sometimes small portions of it have been stored by a collector, a practitioner, a documentarist. Sometimes it has been inherited by a still ongoing television company. Sometimes it ended up with a bankruptcy. Always, it is only partial, chaotic, still to be digitized or randomly digitized archive. To the archives, we will also add other complementary sources, private industrial documents, materials, specially made interview to informants, so historical productions, sculptures, and oral histories. On the other hand, we will also try to build and make accessible as a lasting result of the research project this database to allow students, researchers, and other stakeholders to get at least a glimpse of that kind of programming to help in giving concreteness, solidity to TV show, otherwise limited or condemned to some titles on newspapers. More specifically, we are working to build two main outputs. First of all, an open accessible database that will collect dozens of video clips from the archives, plus several private industrial documents and excerpts from our audio interviews to relevant informants. As a second output, we will build upon it a website working as a sort of digital exhibition, giving meaning to the items included in the dataset. So that being stated, we need to reflect on the starting points of our project and our claims. First of all, we shall deal with the fact that the history of local televisions in Italy is often composed by scattered fragments which need to be retrieved. And that is not an easy task. Until now, in fact, local televisions have been considered as mass consumption-oriented and lowbrow content providers. For this reason, neither state nor regional archives have taken care of their legacy. In other words, we have a problem here of cultural legitimization, which had influenced the need of preserving in an official and proper manner the videotapes onto which local TV shows were recorded. In fact, many of these cassettes, many of these reels were often reused by this television to save money, and that's an issue. The result was the destruction of an important part of their heritage. Thus, we need to be aware of the fact that studying local television means to excavate stories that were not supposed to be told because they were deemed lowbrow, vulgar. Stories that did not belong to the grand history of public broadcasting in Europe. And here we are, challenging a cultural canon. This challenge, however, is made difficult by the absence of fully structured historical sources that allow us to walk along well-known trails. We need to create our own sources, paying attention to their pitfalls. More specifically, our first-hand sources are the audiovisual materials, TV shows and videotapes, for instance, which should be retrieved, mining private archives, private collections. This operation depends on how much we can rely on private and unofficial partners, which can be very jealous of their own materials and forbid us a full access to them. Another crucial element is to reconstruct local TV histories throughout oral history. And here we have another pitfall. How can oral sources, and more precisely stakeholders, be trusted in historical terms? What if they are not reliable? What if they are sure that they have a good memory, but as a matter of fact they have not? What if they want to manipulate somehow the narratives? The most important issue at stake here is that we cannot trust only one source typology. We need to rely on many of them, generating an archive composed of multiple archives, so a kind of trans-archive, belonging to different stakeholders. Moreover, we need to link TV shows and videotapes to the official traces left by local television as media companies, for example, registration acts, mortgages, loans, to oral history sources, and to all newspaper on which we can retrieve, for example, scheduling. It's the only way through which we can reconstruct this multifaceted configuration of this phenomenon, especially in Italy. A quick example here comes from the case of Sardegna 1 television channel, so dealing with the history of a media company. These documents, for example, are housed in institutions such as the so-called chambers of commerce, Camere di Commercio, which in Italy keep track of the industrial fabric of a specific area. In this case, as you can see here, we have the article of the incorporation of Sardegna 1 in a bigger industrial group. These sources, of course, can be enriched by interviews to cameramen, journalists, anchormen, anchor women who worked for local television, focusing on labor dynamics. The other side of the coin refers to media history. How can we reconstruct a TV schedule, for example? A major role, again, is played by newspapers, which back in those days reported TV schedules in their last pages. See, for example, an excerpt from L'Unione Sarda in Sardinia again concerning Sardegna 1. Furthermore, we need to refer to working documents, to industrial documents, which are preserved in the TV network vaults, if they are still broadcasting, or by caring stakeholders, such as all the employees who have kept them in their houses for the sake of their own memory, waiting for the right occasion to display them. Now, my turn, my part. In these last minutes, I'll try to provide insight on video acquisitions and indexing as part of Atlas actions, addressing also some of the struggles posed by the inventorying of the various sources. Let's get out of the boxes by first rephrasing one of our starting assumptions related to the weak material conditions of the video archives we are currently working with, their precariousness. Here's little pictures of our first encounter with Antenna 3 historical collection. Here you see that we move from rows of pre-order material to semi-abandoned boxes in almost inaccessible rooms. This is just to outline, once again, the physicality implied in our scraping of audiovisual and paper sources. This morning we heard paper speaking of lived embodied experience, and here we go again. If, on one hand, while dissecting video archives, the rule is that there are no rules, we could say, when it comes to the dissemination platform, rules are essential, starting from the architectures of the digital system where we aim to store and then exhibit those materials. A platform which, of course, has is technical standards. Let's try to uncover these. As you can read, we are currently working with a preset open access infrastructure named Historica, provided by Alma DL, the digital library of Bologna University. In other words, it's not a web portal specifically designed for our research for this project. Therefore, when drawing and transferring from the archives, we must comply with strict protocols already at the core of the platforms. We have, for example, a data management plan, several technical standards to fulfill. One, for example, regards the 4K resolution, which for our channels cannot be fully applied as we are handling analog fragments of more than 40 years ago. Furthermore, Historica features quite performing zoom magnification functionalities, and this interferes with the compression and with the volumes of our files. So front and back-end coherency, and if needed, renegotiation of predetermined conditions, gaining, margins of flexibility. Let me add that all of these has also an impact on budget. Just think about hosting costs online. Also on legal aspect. In this tension between obligatory choices and customization, a key role, in fact, is also played by legal protection and protection of IP. Also by the attempt to adhere to international standards, international best practices. When aggregating the various materials, we move within a double degree of selection. On one hand, we have to start from a spurious blend of resources and cherry pick what's more representative. On the other, we need to consider their functionality as far as the platform mechanism are accounted. To make the collection browsable, again, we face the necessity to adopt and adapt shared requirements related to primary and secondary metadata, descriptors, tags, item connectors, and so forth. That's a portion of the data grids which we have started to manually compile. In parallel, you can see there, with the platform sampling instructions. Particular attention, for example, is given to item naming, formats, sampling rates, aspect ratio, audio quality, and of course, to the temporal coverage of each video snippet. Now, a couple of very quick bites while I get closer to the conclusions. First of all, the orientation towards video clips, that is fragments taken from single episodes of the programs we're encoding. Here, clips become the compromise between operative, legal, and dissemination-related demands. Thus, not only technical restrictions, but also, we could say, awareness of the average time of attention of the potential database user. Certainly, the challenge here is finding a balance between the fraction and the whole, showing philological respect and fidelity to the original as far as possible. Finally, a hint to the legal dimension of our repository, which entails taking very seriously, as I was mentioning before, rights holders' requests and finding a mediation between the various stakeholders at play. You can guess, for instance, how difficult it was to set up the various versions of release forms for our materials. So we have to make sure that we move in function and not subordinately to our informants, and that the contribution of the sample channels does not become too conditional, too influential in scientific terms. Thank you for your attention. So to be honest, the choice of video clips starts from, again, technical reasons to the total weight of the platform, which should not exceed a certain amount of gigabytes and that kind of stuff. On a second level, we have 5 different channels. And so as far as the final digital exhibition, as we named it, is concerned, we have to find common topics which somehow make those channels similar, through which we can connect different clips. Those topics might be, for example, I'm mentioning some of the ideas we are working on, because this is a project that has just started, so it's a first assessment of the whole. Those topics may be connection with the territory. Those are local channels, so how the connection with local communities is reflected by respective programming. And that's, of course, a common trait of the whole cases we are considering. Style of organizing the show, formats, genre, role given to women, for example, on stage and also backstage. That's probably even more interesting than backstage. The use of telephone while programs are live to establish a contact with audience. So we have to reflect upon a certain number of common topics through which we can build our, let's say, thematic verticals, which links all the different clips. And that's one of the main challenges of the project. Very difficult to make our archive in dialogue with other archives. We do have, of course, the public service broadcaster RAI archive, which works both on a regional basis and on a national one, but still have problems in digitizing the whole heritage. And our project does not deal directly with that. We wanted, and we are trying, to establish a connection with Mediaset, so Berlusconi's Industries archive, not regarding Mediaset as it is now, but regarding the channel called Telemilano 58, so a local channel narrowcasted in the area around Milan, that anticipated Canale 5, and so the whole empire of Berlusconi. My university, Bologna University, has a kind of partnership with Mediaset on other projects, and we are trying to incorporate part of that archives that have already been a spot of academic research, probably the only one due to the future of the industry. But for now, the response has been quite skeptical. They are very reluctant in giving a permission to extract excerpts, image, videos. So we're working on that. Probably we will make it, maybe selecting 3, 4, 5 clips with a very big watermark, because that's what they impose to us. But that would be the only case. Yes.